Hello, this is David from CarDoc Cornwall in Penryn. Today we've got a Volkswagen Golf front bumper that started off as just a bumper corner but developed into the complete bumper, being resprayed as the customer had actually damaged it following my original quote. So after getting the trim items off, we can get on to actually sanding out the repair and working out what needs to be done. I'm actually going to repair the black textured trims, and one day I'll do a video on how that's done. Lots of sanding to expose the damaged areas on the plastic bumper, and eventually I'll get down to the point where I can see where filling needs to take place. Not all the sanding can be done with a machine. Sometimes you have to get in there by hand just to get into the little tight corners and so on. But eventually I can get to the point where I'm ready to put the filler in. The filler's cured with infrared heat, and then I can get on and start sanding using a small block with extraction to take all the dust away. I get into the tight areas by hand, and you can see that I've got the pipe underneath which is sucking away the dust. That's why I'm not wearing a face mask. It was about this point that I noticed the damage on the other side of the car, so I gave the customer a call and asked if I had permission to go ahead and do that repair. He said yes. So now there's lots of preparation, from sorting out the damage, which was fairly light, filling and cleaning and preparing for the primer. Final machine sanding in preparation for the primers. This is down to 320 in areas, and to make sure there are no deep scratches left from the earlier sanding with the pad. I do tend to go to town on the cleaning because you really cannot have a clean enough surface to paint on. And that's when I spotted a couple of dings that I'd missed earlier, so I went back, refilled those, dried them off with infrared, and then now I'm sanding back again. On to the masking stage now. Coming back to the dings, it's not uncommon to actually only spot a ding once you get the first coat of paint on, because it tends to highlight things like that, and that's what actually happens with this one, as you'll see. I think the reason I enjoy masking is that it sort of indicates that you come to the end of the preparation stage and you're moving on. It's that landmark moment, and I like to get it right as well. Now that the masking's on and in place, we can get on to the first coat of primer. This is a high build two-part primer, and it provides a fantastic surface for the paint. Also gives a good level of material for sanding back, so that all the minor little stone chips and bits and pieces can easily be filled with the primer. We get on with the standing of that first instance with 320 grit just to get everything level, and then move on to 400, which is what the paint will be applied on top of. One stage that was left out because I forgot to press the record button was the application of adhesion promoter. This is a material that's applied to plastic to enable the paint to stick to it properly. Now we're sanding with a 400 grit ready for paint, and again I'll have to take the 400 grit off the machine and get into all the little nooks and crannies to make sure that there are no rough areas in there, because they will show up if you paint over them. Now doing the final sanding, and then we can start cleaning, first of all blowing down with the airline. You'll notice I am wearing breathing protection at this point because of the dust flying around, and then applying different solvent cleaners to make sure that surface is absolutely spotless, and then we can get on to applying the first coat of paint. That coat is dried off with the air blowers, and then immediately followed by a second heavier coat of colour. But I've spotted a little dink there which I need to take care of. So filling again, drying with the infrared, and then sanding, and then we get onto the second coat. Once the second coat has been dried off, I do a third coat because I've noticed I'm not really covering the primer as much as I'd want. But then we get onto the final coat, which is called the drop coat or effect coat, which makes sure that the metallic particles stand out as they should. After dusting off and going over with a tack rag, we can get onto the first coat of lacquer. Medium coat, which is allowed to go touch dry about 10 minutes, and then a heavier finish coat. I wish I'd used a slightly larger gun for this one actually, but that gun I'm using, the LPH80, is fantastic. Schoolboy error, ran out of lacquer, so I had to go back and finish off that corner. Once the infrared lamps are on there, the lacquer is nice and dry and ready for polishing. Actually got a gun finish on that, so it required very little polishing. I say gun finish, just on the right side it was a little dull, so I had to concentrate a little bit more on that. Getting the trim parts back in and ready to polish.